Hey folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio, where the veil between the known and the unknown is lifted, one story at a time. I welcome you and all listeners to the channel, as well as the first timers in the chat. I hope you find tonight's subject and reports interesting. Now, across the vast and shadowy landscapes of North America, unsettling encounters continue to be reported. Accounts of beings that defy natural classification. Whether deep in the forest, along remote highways, or even near suburban developments, something lurks in the periphery of our understanding. Now, tonight, on Phantoms and Monsters Radio, we ask a fundamental question. Are these unknown entities merely undiscovered natural creatures, traditional cryptids like Bigfoot and Cryptid Canines, or could they be something far more terrifying? The testimonies we'll explore have been submitted directly to me and my trusted colleagues. Eyewitness accounts from ordinary people who have stumbled into the ordinary situations, or extraordinary situations. Some describe flesh and blood creatures with unnatural intelligence, while others speak of entities that flicker between dimensions, appearing and vanishing in ways no biological organism should. These reports challenge not only zoological norms, but also the very boundaries of what we consider to be real. In many of these cases, the behavior of the entity is as perplexing as its appearance. There are incidents of telepathic communication, electromagnetic disturbances, and an unexplained fear. Phenomena that suggest something beyond a hidden species. Are we dealing with interdimensional beings cloaked in animal form? Experimental biological constructs? Manifestation of our collective psyche? The lines are increasingly blurred. Now, as always, we present these stories not as fiction, but as part of the living archive of anomalous encounters being reported across this continent. Our goal is not to sensationalize, but to offer a platform for those who have experienced the unexplained and to provoke critical thought among listeners who dare to confront these mysteries head on. So prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown. This isn't just about creatures in the woods. This is about the very fabric of reality being peeled back, one sighting at a time. Are we dealing with cryptids, natural beings yet to be discovered, or are we brushing up against something far more primal, far more terrifying? But before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by sharing our programming. And if you're watching us on YouTube, Super Chat and Super Thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. Other donation links are also shown in the description, so thanks for your consideration. Now, your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you found interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, as well as Kevin and Mary at ESP. Now, if you're in the chat and you have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one after my presentation. So this first account, the witness states, "Hello, I want to report disturbing activity around my residence for the past 2 weeks. I hope you can provide some insight into what we're dealing with. I live in a rural area of southeastern Oklahoma, a few miles from Tallahassee. I've lived here for all my 48 years and have never experienced anything strange in this area before. On June 1st of this year, at about 10:30 p.m., I was on my back porch reading the newspaper. My husband was getting ready to leave for work. Now, my porch faces a large wooded area about 800 feet or so from the lake. I have a small yard, and the edge of the woods is about 50 feet from the house. My husband walked out the back door, said goodbye, and walked to his truck. As soon as he pulled away, I heard a loud, shrill sound coming from the direction of the lake. It reminded me of a pig squealing, but it was much louder and scarier. I didn't get up from my chair as I looked towards the woods. Now, after a few minutes, I heard something heavy walking through the woods. It was something or someone on 2 legs. It was so dark that I couldn't see anything. Then suddenly 3 deer burst out of the woods and ran alongside the house. I thought they caused the noise, so I got up and walked into the house. Most nights after I come home from work around 8:30 p.m., I eat dinner and then go out on the porch to read the newspaper. Ever since that first night, I've heard the same shrill sound on 4 other occasions. My husband sat with me a few times, and he was surprised by the sounds. He has been a hunter all his adult life, and he had no idea what made those sounds. So this Tuesday night, I was sitting on the porch talking to my daughter on the phone. My husband was working that night. It was around 10:45 p.m. I had a strange feeling most of the evening and kept my gaze focused on the woods. I was about ready to get up and walk into the house after ending the call, but then I noticed a pair of bright yellow eyes looking at me from the woods. It was only a few feet into the brush, and the eyes were at least 7 feet from the ground. I ran into the kitchen, quickly closed the door, and locked it. I turned off the lights inside, but the porch light was still on, and the edge of the woods was still illuminated. As I peeked out the window above the sink, I noticed a tall, huge, dark figure standing in the back of the yard. The eyes still shone brightly and were looking in my direction. As I continued to watch, my eyes adjusted to the low light. I then noticed the long, thick arms with fingers and long nails. I recognized a long snout and long pointed ears. Then suddenly it turned and ran into the woods. It was gone. I was trembling because I had no idea what I had just seen. I called my daughter back and told her. My son-in-law and she immediately came over and spent the night. He brought his rifle with him. The next morning, I told my husband what I saw. Now, he's part Osage and believes in animal spirits, but he was confused by this thing I described. He told me that it might be a trickster spirit, and if we ignore it, it won't bother us. I'm not so sure I believe that. This didn't look like a spirit and resembled a huge dark coyote walking on 2 legs. Have you heard of anything like this? Please contact me. I'd like to ask you a few questions. So I did. I called the witness and I tried to answer her questions. She has not been able to see any tracks in any other evidence. She heard the shrill sound night or 2 nights ago before she went to bed. Now, her husband contacted the authorities, but she said that he was just making inquiries, wanting to know if there had been any other reports. So it seems they refused to give out any information. Now, her neighbors have not noticed anything unusual, but she told me that they were elderly and rarely outside. So I asked her to keep me informed of further incidents. So this next witness states, "Hi, I'm writing to report an extraordinary and unsettling experience I had in the early hours of April 19th, 2025, around 2:30 a.m. in San Luis Obispo, California. I live on the ground floor near the San Luis Obispo Country Club. I was outside my home on the phone with a friend when we both suddenly heard a loud, unnatural clicking sound. It was sharp, mechanical, almost like a bomb timer or distorted insect, unlike anything I've ever heard before in nature or from a machine. When I looked up into the sky, I saw something that completely froze me in place. There was a massive winged figure above me. It wasn't like Big Bird big. It was huge with an estimated wingspan of 10 feet or more. And its body size was close to that of a human, around 6.5 feet tall. It was circling above me slowly and continued making a clicking noise as it moved. Its body looked dark, almost shadowy, and I couldn't make out the face. No glowing eyes or defining features. Just the sheer size and the sound overwhelmed everything. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. The clicking sound stopped midair. The sky was empty. I ran to take cover beneath the entrance of my home, and just as I was catching my breath, I heard a sound in the nearby bushes. I looked and saw a tall figure about 6.5 feet standing or crouched in the shadows. I couldn't see its face, but its shape and presence felt connected to the flying figure from moments before. It was completely silent, but I felt an intense wave of fear and instinctively ran inside. Now, I want to emphasize that my friend heard the clicking too over the phone and commented that it sounded something like something was about to explode. The entire thing happened over maybe 2 to 3 minutes. There were no red eyes, no flapping, no sound of wings, just the clicking, an enormous presence, and the silence when it was gone. Now, this wasn't a dream. It wasn't just my imagination. I'm fully aware of how strange it sounds, but I needed to document it. Whether it was a cryptid, a supernatural entity, or something else, I'm certain of what I experienced. Please let me know if there are any other reports like this in San Luis Obispo area, or if you'd like more details. I just want to make sure that this is taken seriously. Thank you for your time. Please get back to me. What I experienced is still haunting me. I need to find out what it was. So I did get a hold of her. And I have actually had a few reports in that area. Really, one of them was very near her, but it wasn't anything to do with a winged being or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't know what she experienced, but we'll keep in contact. Now, this account was forwarded to me by my friends and colleagues, Kyle and Cam, over at Expanded Perspectives. This is a recent series of events. So the witness tells, "My name is RJ, and I own a small piece of land just outside of Ellensburg, Washington. It is not a large city by any means, and it's on the smaller side, but it's still very spread out. There are farms and ranches all around town, and this happened on a property I recently bought on the outskirts of the city. Now, I purchased the land from an older man who mentioned keeping cows on the property, but I hadn't heard much because I was just proud of my accomplishment. I should have listened to him more because I later found out that he had moved into an assisted living facility and died shortly afterwards. This all occurred around 1.5 to 2 years ago. The first year was fine. The cows were fattened by winter, and we fixed the porch awning, which we shouldn't have done because it broke under the weight of the snow in the winter. We also painted the barn red and white, classic colors. We set up a rabbit hutch for my kids to practice raising animals. But everything started in the summer of the next year. We lost one or two calves, but we thought it was just coyotes. Nothing major since they were on the weaker and smaller side anyway. So one day while taking a walk on the property during a pleasant cooler evening, we found a cloak made of various animal skins. Now, my kids are very intuitive and could identify some of the skins, mostly coyotes. I thought it was just a project that the farmer had, which got blown away in the wind. I didn't know. So we brought it back to ask him about it, but we never got around to it because we got so busy. But that was when the rabbits started going missing. We initially thought they had just escaped or something since the cage was intact and nothing was out of place. Now, at first, we lost two, then two more, and then two more until we had none left. When they started disappearing for the first time, I set up some simple traps just the way I set them. But then I thought it was just some clever coyote, so I decided to hunt them. I grabbed my headlight in my 22. I didn't particularly like guns, but it was necessary to have one for this kind of thing. As the sun began to set, I started wandering the property, searching for signs of coyote, like scat trails and the like. I spotted some signs, but found no coyotes. I heard a couple of owls hooting, crickets chirping, and coyotes howling, but there was no trace of actual coyotes. Around 11 p.m., I turned around and headed back home. Now, when I arrived home, I glanced over at the tree that the kids love climbing when they are on their tablets. There, I noticed scratches on the bark, higher than I could reach. Maybe it was a bear, but then I heard a scream behind me. It sounded like a woman. I remembered that cougars could scream, so I thought it was a cougar. But later that week, I set up some trail cams around the property to see where the cougar likes to hang out. But every single time they were broken and smashed. The only reasonable explanation I could think of at the time was that there were some hunters who weren't supposed to be there. When some SD cards were intact, I reviewed them or what they had captured, but they always came up blank. Maybe a coyote walked across the screen, but otherwise nothing led up to being smashed. The next thing that happened was in November. We lost two cows, both pregnant and mangled, almost murdered. The only thing missing from both was the calf inside. You could piece both together just without the calves. We were losing money at this point. The calves we were supposed to sell in the spring and summer months were going missing, and by midwinter, I felt like I was grasping at straws for reasons why they were disappearing. Coyotes, cougars, bears, and even the thought of some psycho hunters. But there was also something wrong with the reason for each. So one night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about cougars and how they sometimes preyed on cows. So I went downstairs and looked up encounters of cows and cougars. Eventually, I somehow ended up with alien conspiracies and cow mutilations, but that was ridiculous and almost unbelievable. Now, while I was researching that night, my eldest child, then 13, came down the stairs shaking in fear. He said there was something outside his window looking at him. I immediately got up and checked through the sliding glass door. I remember it taking a moment for my eyes to adjust, but there it was in the snow, clear as day. The black skin of a creature contrasted against the white snow. A deer, but wrong, larger and skinny. The only thing that came to mind was the picture of a wendigo. I knew about wendigos, and I thought they were just a Native American tall tale like Paul Bunyan, but here it was right in front of me with a cloak made of rabbit fur. I understand when you think of a wendigo, you think of the interpretation built upon pulp culture, and the original was far different, and I respect that. However, I know what I saw. A creature with black skin, the body and the skull of a deer, which unusually was hornless. My son and I stared at it for some time, but then it walked away from our view. and a few moments later I heard the scream, the same one I had heard when I found the scratch marks on the tree. But it sounded like my son. Now, neither I or my son have seen it much since then, but the signs of existence are ever present. Scratch marks on fence posts and screams in the night. I have some photos from my phone, but they aren't good. When it turned to spring, I began to sell the calves and survived and weren't taken. I was forced to sell all the calves and make some profit, but not much. A few months passed and I saw it, and its signs of existence less. But with my frequent trips to town, I have seen more missing pet posters. I don't know if they were always there, but I feel like there's some connection to that in the Wendigo. I have looked at a few of the posters, and they're smaller animals, maybe a golden retriever as well. I think it was trained to eat calves on my property, but once they left, it began expanding into its hunting area and hunting further out. Now it's in town, hunting dogs, cats, maybe livestock on the edges, but it fed on calves before. What happens when it runs out of animals entirely? I have heard it mimics friends and family that we have had over for barbecue once. I put up posters around the town warning of the creature. I just hope that people believe it. I even think to myself about how far out it sounds. But thanks for reading my story. Well, I wonder what your thoughts are on these incidents. A mimicking creature, possibly a Wendigo? I keep thinking more of a skinwalker, but then again, a skinwalker continually coming back and forth like that and leaving signs is just not conducive to the this being, which is actually a witch that transforms into some other being. You think it's something else? If you do, let me know. Now, this next account, the witness states, "Hello, thanks for reading my email. I live in a recently built house in Magog, Quebec, about 1 kilometer west of Lake Magog. Near my house is a forest and a large marshy area approximately 200 meters beyond my property. I have lived here for 2 years. Many of my neighbors have been here for the same amount of time. Now, since June of this year, we have been hearing loud snarling sounds coming from the marsh, mostly late at night. At first, I thought it may be a coyote or another canine of some kind, but recently we've noticed activity that rules this out. My neighbor 3 houses down has recently obtained a llama and kept it in a large railed pen behind their house. This past weekend, the llama disappeared. The only evidence found were drag marks in the area around the pen leading to the marsh. There were no tracks or blood anywhere. The police took a report and searched. They found nothing. On Sunday night, I was in my greenhouse cleaning up when I heard a loud thud coming from behind my utility shed. I started to walk out of my greenhouse when I heard that distinctive snarling, and it was very close. I immediately went back into the greenhouse, cut off the lights, and quietly watched. I called my wife on my cell phone and told her what was going on, and to make sure all the doors were locked. I sat on a bench and waited. I was there for about 10 minutes or so when I heard the snarling again. There was a security light on a timer mounted outside of our back porch. It was on and shining towards the greenhouse. There is an additional security light by the driveway that comes on if triggered by something moving nearby. I heard some movement near the utility shed again, then another thud and a brief shrieking sound. Suddenly, the security light above the driveway comes on. It was a huge winged creature with a long, thin tail. It was hideous. It looked like it had bat skin and short horns on a weird snake-like head. It opened its wings at one point. I say the wingspan was at least 8 meters. I didn't notice feathers. It stood about 3 to 4 meters high as well. It was snarling and thrashing its head as it ran towards the marsh. I really know no animal to reference it to. One of my neighbors came running out, but he didn't see it. I described what I witnessed. He looked shocked at what I was saying. I don't know if he believed me or not. We decided to call the police and report an unknown animal on the property. I didn't want to describe what I'm sure I saw. The next day, I contacted a zoologist in Montreal and was referred to a cryptozoologist in Sherbrooke. Neither of them offered much help, and neither volunteered to come and examine the area. The police found nothing, though my yard has 4 dig marks in it, but looked like someone took a shovel and overturned the soil. I haven't heard any sound since that incident. If you would like to contact me, feel free to do so. I had to wait until the evening the next day to call the witness, and I spoke to his wife earlier on. And she said that she didn't see the creature, but she heard it. And the witness told me that the police weren't interested and directed him to contact wildlife and animal control. So the witness and his wife moved to Magog from Western Ontario 2 years ago. He's not familiar with the outdoors. He didn't provide much more information, but he refused to give me the contact details of his neighbors. He agreed to let me post the report. I honestly don't know what to think about this sighting. I've heard weird things, but I don't know. The tone of his voice while describing the incident over the phone didn't instill overwhelming confidence in his story. Also, he didn't take any photos of the marks on the lawn, so I'm presenting it to you as received. You can make your own determination. This next account, I was contacted by a gentleman by the name of Edward in Kansas City, Kansas, by telephone after he read a post that referenced my book, Mothman Dynasty, Chicago's Winged Humanoids. Edward wanted to share an encounter he and his cousin had in the summer of 1999 between 10 and 11 p.m. local time. They were traveling southbound on I-49 towards Joplin, Missouri, with Edward driving. He could not recall the exact area, but they were not too far from Joplin. Now, he states that he noticed a tall figure quickly running from the direction of the median to his left, and directly in front of his car. Now, both he and his cousin observed this human-like being and immediately said to each other that it looked like a gargoyle. The headlights illuminated the humanoid so well that both witnesses could get a good description of it. The gargoyle was at least 6.5 feet tall and had dark, leathery, hairless skin covered the body. The being looked towards the witness, and its face featured starkly flattened characteristics with large, deep-set eyes. There were large wings that lay flat on its back, but were extended as to reach the other side of the highway. Now, Edward believes this being began to ascend into the air above the field. Now, Edward noted that he has had no other comparisons to make regarding the humanoid other than calling it a gargoyle. However, after watching the movie Jeepers Creepers, following the film's release in 2001, he stated that the humanoid was very similar to the Creeper character. Now, both witnesses remained quiet about the encounter until a few years later when Edward married his wife. He and his cousin recounted the incident to her. Now, the witness seemed grateful that he could tell his story without someone thinking he was crazy. And like I have said before, this whole thing in Chicago and the area around, many times we've had people refer to the Jeepers Creepers creeper from the film. So, maybe that's what he saw, but I don't know. Now, I talked to a witness of a reptilian humanoid that crossed in front of them while driving on a rural road in Roan Mountain, Tennessee. One evening in 2010 near Roan Mountain, Tennessee, a woman was driving her ex and his son back home from a birthday dinner at a favorite restaurant and was coming along the 2-lane stretch of road when ahead of them they saw what appeared to be a large white ball that had moved out onto the highway directly from the cemetery above. She said it began coming towards them as if it was trying to collide with the vehicle, and the closer they got to this thing, they got a better look at it. Now, she described it as appearing to be half animal, reptile, half human, and human limbs. It had 2 arms and 2 legs and was crawling on its belly. She hoped that the creature would exit the highway and into the woods to prevent getting hit, but it just continued moving directly at them and the vehicle. She slammed on her brakes to avoid hitting it, and at that point, the creature went from spinning like a tornado right before it contacted the front of the vehicle. Then she said it went beneath the radiator and vanished. She, her ex, and his son were all quite shaken and terrified and said that whatever the creature was, it wasn't anything from this world. She continued describing it as having 2 human arms and legs, mid-body alligator or reptilian, and white as snow. It crawled on its stomach like a reptile. The ex stated that during the encounter, it felt like time had stood still. Everything just slowed down. All 3 of them agreed that they had a very eerie feeling of something very evil present before they encountered this thing. Now, I have family in that area. I've talked about this before. I have never heard of anything like this, so I kind of told one of my relatives about this, so they know at least I got the report. So maybe if they hear about anything, they'll let me know. But who knows? Now, this next witness states, we live in the Pacific Northwest near Tacoma, Washington, on many acres of mostly tree-covered land with a creek. We have seen and heard a strange nocturnal bat-like creature. This thing is huge, light gray, and has a furry body, but no feathers or scales. It silently swoops down at you with giant bat wings. It makes a sound like a jungle monkey or bird, thus we refer to it as the monkey bird. We keep our chickens and goats, 2 small dogs, and cats safely housed at night. However, 2 of our cats who sneaked out one night onto the roof disappeared without a trace of fur, blood, or any evidence of exactly what had happened. They wouldn't run away. Our outdoor watchdogs don't allow any coyotes or ground-traveling predators anywhere near us. There were 2 of them together, and they seemed fearless of me when they swooped down at me more than once and returned way up into the top of the highest tree. I couldn't get a look at the face or the eyes, mainly the huge gray bat wings, approximately 11 to 12 foot span, is what I could see. They seemed to show up every summer, always after dusk and any time through the night. Locals don't seem to know about them. I might ask the local Native American tribes to see if they know anything about what these creatures may actually be. Do you know of anyone else who might have seen these things or what they are? My brother and I saw another weird bat-like creature 2 summers ago that was also quite bizarre, yet not like the 2 large ones. We were riding our bikes at dusk, and this black guinea pig-sized thing with bat wings with holes all through the wings ran across the dirt road in front of us and under a bush. We don't know anyone who has seen anything like that either, but we did see it. We see regular little common bats all the time after dusk, so we know that it's not, that what they look like, but we know owls, hawks, eagles, and all the normal flying creatures around here, and these others are definitely out of the ordinary. Now, I did talk to him, and I did know that there are Eurasian eagle owls in the area, but I don't know if that's what they saw. Honestly, they don't really describe. This description isn't like that Eurasian eagle owls, but I don't know of any bat species that size that live outside of the tropics. Vampire bats, great bulldog bats, flying foxes, they can reach maximum size, but I don't think they could adapt to the climate of Tacoma, Washington region, where the climate is mild during the summer and when temperatures tend to be in the 60s, and cold during the winter when temperatures tend to be in the 40s. But, some mammals can adapt to a climate change, so who knows? But then I later received this follow-up. Thank you for checking with your colleague. Are the owl wings shaped like bat wings? Do they cling to the sides of the trees? Do they make sounds like hoo wah, ah, hoo wah? Like the wah, like it's rolling out off your tongue. Also, the skin on the chest and wings are gray, mottled with some brownish color like a Mexican hairless dog skin. And it had visible blood veins kind of like protruding on the skin area. Where can we find a picture of an Asian eagle owl and find out what it sounds like? These might be molting or sick or something. We would love to solve the mystery and know more about them. Please let us know if you find any more information. Thank you again. And then again, they got back to me. Thanks again for your help and research. It's truly appreciated. We are near Tacoma in a large forested area with a huge creek running all through it. We looked through and listened to all the eagle owl info and enjoyed it very much. I can say with certainty that these things are not owls, eagles, vultures, or anything like them. I guess no one would believe us unless they saw them and heard them. These are real. They have huge bat wings and a claw type thing on the top of the wing that helps them clutch the trees. Indeed, they don't seem to flap like regular bats would. They quietly swoop and glide. They sound like those jungle monkeys, and you can see skin, no feathers, scales, etc. I'm sure these have got to be characterized as unknown. Maybe someone has been doing some weird genetic experiments with wildlife and releasing them to see what the survival rate would be. Maybe an environmental mutation. We would try to ask others who spend time after dusk in the forest whether they have seen, or heard anything like this. We will let you know right away if we learned any more about this. It's such a pleasure to communicate with you. Well, that was about 3 years ago, and I haven't heard back from them. So I don't know what they're encountering. I don't know if they're still seeing it or not, but they haven't got back to me. Now, this next account was also provided by Kyle and Cam over at Expanded Perspectives. Witness states, "Hi, I'm Luke from Western Kentucky. This is a weird one. I put this experience on the back burner for far too long. I wanted to get this off my chest for years. It's something that happened in my backyard a few years ago, so here's what went down. It was the summer 2019 when my wife and I had just purchased a new home in a great neighborhood. Our house is in the very back, so where my backyard ends, the forest begins. There's plenty of room for a decent garden and space for the kids to have a nice place to play. Fast forward a bit, and I've got quite a nice little selection of veggies growing out there, mostly squashes, tomatoes, and peppers. And in the very back was a perfect little cabbage patch. Behind the cabbage was the creek, then the woods for miles. So the night that had me scratching my head ever since happened late in the evening or early morning. It was supposed to have been around 1:30 a.m. I had just finished watching TV and needed to go to the bathroom before tucking in for bed. The window in my back bathroom faces the backyard. If the blinds are open, you've got a full view of the garden and woods. As I was finishing up, I glanced out into the darkness. I forgot to mention that there's kind of a floodlight on a telephone pole in the corner of the yard, so the area where the cabbages are located is somewhat illuminated. You can't make out the colors per se, but the silhouettes and outlines are very visible. I've seen many critters messing about out there, cats, dogs, raccoons, possums, that kind of thing. But what I saw that night, I still can't explain. The first thing that caught my attention was the movement behind the tomatoes near the cabbages. That spot wasn't illuminated, but I could just make out the silhouette of something about 2 to 3 feet tall moving up and down in one spot for about 10 seconds, then shifting over a few feet and repeating the same motion, moving up and down. As I got closer to the brighter spot, I started to discern what I was seeing. I rubbed my eyes a few times and squinted to try and clear my vision, but the image never changed. What I saw was what looked like a head and torso. The head and torso of a humanoid type looked to be halfway buried from waist down, but then it moved. So it wasn't a half buried person. There were no visible legs. It was like the body was missing. The legs were gone. This thing was using hands like feet to get around. When we made it just inside the band of light, I could see that what I was seeing was correct. A torso using its arms and hands to move. It was hairless, but not pale, and its head looked to be very misshapen. Its arms were very thick. I could make out the size when the light would shine through the space between the arm and the torso. Then, by accident, I had my face too close to the screen on the open window, and it made a popping sound. It turned and looked right at me. I couldn't move. I was frozen in place. I didn't know what to do. I'd never been in a situation like that before. So after a few minutes, which felt a lot longer, I yelled out, "Hey!" It didn't seem to phase at all. But then, with a surprising speed, it darted towards me, stopping near the middle of the yard. Then all of a sudden, it screamed this rough, almost metallic sounding scream, kind of like a screech owl. Then it took back off to the area where it had been when I first noticed it grabbed something from the ground and took off through the creek, dragging it behind. I could hear splashes as it went through, and then sticks cracking as it started up through the woods. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. I wanted to go outside with a flashlight and investigate, but honestly, I was spooked. What did I just see? One of the things that came to mind was the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murray and Dan Aykroyd, the scene where Eddie was pretending to be a war veteran who lost his legs and moved around on a cart. Could a homeless person with no legs be camping out in the woods and creeping around people's backyards? Highly doubtful. Plus, it didn't explain the odd-shaped head and that terrible scream. I never heard anything like it. That morning, when the sun came up, I went out to the backyard to investigate. Everything was fine until I got to the cabbages. Well, they were all gone except for one. Then I thought back to the way the thing was moving up and down and moving over and repeating the process. It was digging up my cabbage. To this day, it's still one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. So, folks, that's the last of the encounters and incidents. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in here and put it all in caps, and we'll go from there. Got anything, folks? I know they're a little weird, but Dagnabbit asks, there's a type of gargoyle seen in Puerto Rico that has a human face painted all white and ram-like horns that flies just like the Mothman, also seen in southern Texas. Yeah, I think George Martin, who is a journalist, he's part of the team. Actually, he's one of our affiliates. He has sent me some things very similar to that, and I think he's been posting some of it on Facebook as well. Occasionally, he will throw one my way, and I'll post on the blog. But I have heard about that. I don't know what they're seeing. The name of the area where they're seeing is the Yunque. Is that what it's called? It's a rainforest in a hilly area of Puerto Rico, but it's an area that has had a lot of sightings of these gargoyle-like beings. But Jorge has been reporting on something similar to that over the years. Jose Sanchez, are there actual Jeepers Creepers, and do they have some scarecrow attributes? I saw a movie where the being is like that. I don't know if they have scarecrow attributes. I mean, I think people don't know what they're seeing and try to equate it to the one thing that they have seen, and it's in the movies, or some type of pulp culture or something, or pop culture. And many times we get those type of descriptions of something that has been seen in movies and TV and such. That's just like the Glimmer Man and the sightings that kind of mimic the cloaking aspect of the alien in the Predator movies. We've been getting a lot of those, and like I said before, we're writing a book about it. Kyle and Cam from Expanded Perspectives and I are actually writing a book. And in fact, I just started putting the full outline up, and we're hoping to have it released by the end of the summer. Mortal Clown, are you getting reports Mothman sightings in Chicago lately? I've had a few. It's very sparse, and many times they're older reports. I don't really remember how many we've had that have been recent. I think maybe one or two. I think last year altogether we had 7 or 8 reports, and I think we've had 2 this year so far. So, yeah, I mean, we're still getting reports, and when I do get a tranche of them, I will talk about them on the show. But the phenomena is not showing up as much as it had before. I doubt it's over. I'm quite sure we're going to get more reports. Maybe they will change and turn into something else at some point. Who knows? El Yunque. That's right, Marla. You're right. Cans Quatch. Have you taken reports of Sasquatch or other cryptids wearing animal skins? If I have, I can't recall it. No, I don't know. No, I don't think so. I don't think I have. That you mentioned it. Jose Sanchez, could gargoyles be a subtype of Mothman species, related distant cousin? I don't know. It could be. There's a lot of flying things out there. We just don't understand what they are. And of course, we don't know what the Mothman is or the winged humanoid in general. Sure, it could be. It could be maybe a subspecies, or they may actually come from the same place and or portal travelers, just like I believe the Mothman or the winged humanoids are. Dagnammit. Campers near Kingsman, Arizona experienced a pack of chupacabras trying to attack them in the desert. If you have that link, send it to me. I'd like to look at that. Anything else, folks? Okay. Well, I want to thank each and all of you for watching and chatting. If you donated, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes all this possible. So please like, subscribe, and share. If you have a sighting or encounter report that you would like to be considered for the personal report show or posted at Fams of Monsters, please feel free to contact me at my email, lonstrickler@famsofmonsters.com. So until we meet again next Friday night, stay healthy and safe. Have a great night and have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.